Hello! Howdy! Hi everybody, Sam Goodman. Really fucking scary stories. I hope you are doing absolutely wonderful, marvelous, amazing, super duper good, wherever you find yourself in this weird, wacky, wonky, macabre, fun and interesting world. So, I mean, that's how I'm doing. I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. Before we get into today's episode, do me a favor, cruise over to all of our social media channels, including my handy dandy YouTube channel. And you can just find me, Sam Goodman. Look for the ugly mug there, and you can see some of the videos that I put out pretty frequently. You can head over and listen to this podcast on the Pale Horse Media Co. YouTube channel as well, if you're into that. If you need to be like super secret and like hide it behind your work, like your Word doc you pull up over it at work. There's no video, it's just the audio, but it's there if you want to listen to it. And obviously the Hop Nerd Podcast, Hop Nerd YouTube channel, all that kind of sort of stuff. Find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, blah, 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 blah. You know how to do the internet. So I'm not going to sit here and explain to you how to do the internet. You got this one. I have faith in you. You've got this one. All that love, all that support, it means a ton to us. It quite literally helps us keep the lights on around here. It allows us to continue to bring you this amazing content. So we're going to go back to doing something a little bit, a little bit different, because we already did this, but we're going to do more of it because you seem to like it so much. We're going to do more Haunted Reddit. You know how this thing goes. I've scoured some of the internet, and most of the really creepy ghost stories seem to come off Reddit, so I've pulled some of those. I've tried my best to not read them, just like in the previous Haunted Reddit episode, and I'm going to read through them and react to them with you as we go through. How about that? And we'll just get through as many as we can and try to keep this thing, within a reasonable amount of time. I've got a lot more stories, so I'm just going to kind of randomly do it, I think, but here we go, and I'm going to use the usernames, because I didn't use the usernames last time, and this is from user Huey M. Mine is secondhand. My stepmom and dad used to work opposite shifts there for a while. He was on nights, her on days. They had a set of baby monitors when my sister and I were babies. My dad said they could record short messages with them, and they would leave them out on the coffee table for the other to hear. When they got home from their shift, this went on for a bit. Then, once their shifts lined up, they put the monitors away in storage. She died of cancer at a really young age, and my dad had just gotten back from the funeral and was home alone. He spent the night going through their things, packing some stuff away. He said he had one of the baby monitors sitting out on the coffee table, and it woke him up in the middle of the night with an old message going off on repeat that she had recorded. It said, "I love you, Mike. I love you, Mike," over and over. My dad told me he just sat on the couch in the dark and listened to the message until the batteries died. A couple of weeks later, he had picked us kids up for the weekend. After my sister and I went inside, he said he was sitting on the porch smoking, and a strong gust of wind blew, and he said he could smell her perfume that she always wore. It scared me hearing these stories as a kid, but now I can see the beauty and peace in those experiences. So a little haunted, but very, 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 very sweet. And again, these are the ones that you really hope are real, for maybe the opposite reason of them being really fucking scary. But again, I hope this experience was real. I hope this is something that this gentleman's dad experienced. So this one comes from account deleted. So no user on this one. My grandfather was a bad man, alcoholic, extremely violent, tried to kill my grandmother in front of the kids. One of his less horrible acts was abandoning my grandmother with her 6 kids, all under the age of 12. Some of his kids maintained minimal contact with him. He lived about 30 or 40 miles away from my grandmother and the 2 kids who stayed in the area. When he was in his 80s, he was hospitalized and then passed away in the middle of the night. In the morning, his oldest child, one of my aunts, went to the morgue to identify the body and fill out the paperwork. On her way, she stopped by my grandmother's to break the news. When she came in, my grandmother said, "Oh, it's a sad day. He died just past midnight," I imagined. My grandmother had begun to show some signs of dementia and just basic old age, and so the weird comments weren't too out of character, and my aunt assumed that the hospital or one of her siblings had already called to tell her mother the news. My aunt shook it off and drove to the morgue. When she saw the death certificate, she was shocked to see the time of death listed at 12:10 a.m. On her way home, she stopped back at my grandmother's and asked her who had called to tell her the news and asked why she had said she thought he had just died just past midnight. My grandmother said he came to see me at 12:30 and we talked for a spell. He wanted to apologize for all he'd done to me and you and the kids. I think he made his peace and and was able to move on, so I'm glad of that. My grandmother then resumed humming and doing a jigsaw puzzle. How crazy. Definitely crazy. The connection from the afterlife stopping by. Granny knew what had happened long before anybody else did. Carrying on with their super duper creepy stories, this comes from username the True Lord Humongous. You Lord Humongous. Not creepy, but kind of cool. My mother split and transplanted a rose bush from my grandfather's farm about 40 years ago. It took but never bloomed. At that point, she only kept it because it grew into the fence nicely and kept us kids from climbing it. My grandfather died about 5 years after she had transplanted it, and that spring it bloomed red roses. A few years after my grandmother died, in the spring after, it bloomed white roses. These are the only 2 years that it has ever bloomed. Back to kind of odd, creepy, weird, but kind of sort of sweet. That might be a little too sweet for us. Who knows? Moving on from user name filling_Bacilli. Whatever. Growing up, my older brother had a computer program that he used to compose piano music on. I remember I was reading in the living room when I heard the most beautiful violin melody I had ever heard. I listened to the whole thing, which was several minutes long. I walked down the hallway to compliment my brother on his masterpiece when I realized my brother was not using the computer and I was home alone. Yeah, big, hard pass. Big hard pass on that one, for sure. Here's another one, no username, late to the party, but here's mine. I used to be in the military, and the training camp bunk that we lived in was said to be haunted. Occasionally, our stuff would go missing and reappear in weird places, like under our bed or inside a bag that we had zipped up and stuff. You know, no big deal, right? I mean, human error and all. Then came the instance that freaked everyone out. It was one night after lights out, and my friend was on his phone texting his girlfriend. Most of us were drifting off to sleep and were laying on our beds, etc. Suddenly, he heard the shuffling of feet from the corridor. So thinking that it was our sergeant, he quickly hid his phone under his pillow, rolled over on his side, and pretended to sleep. Till this day, what happens next chills me to the bone. You like that dramatic effect there? While he pretended to sleep, he heard someone right behind him at the other side of his bed going, "Don't worry, you can continue to pretend to be asleep." I would dismiss this as a figment of his imagination, except about 5 other people around him heard it as well, including me. Creepier still, there was no one there, and it was the voice of a little girl that said it. For reference, our training camp was in the middle of an island and was set up away from the admin block. The island had been closed by the government for army training purposes for the past 15 years, so there were definitely no civilians around, let alone kids. To make matters freakier, when we came back from our weekend home leave, there was a bunch of female hair on his bed, neatly bundled up, long and jet black. Under his pillow, a note that said, "Remember me?" ? See that? Nice dramatic effect. Now, as I said, we were in the middle of the forest, in the middle of an island. At this point in time, there were no female recruits personnel on the island. Our bunks were locked up for the weekend, and the duty sergeant had no idea that the incident happened. We never spoke about it after that night. Still chills me to the bone thinking about it. There you go. That one, pretty fucked up. For sure. There were some comments on this one, and so he goes on to explain. He said, also, for those of you that say this might be a prank, yes, it very well may have been, but if it were, it had been one heck of a prank, and I was fooled super bad. The complexity of the prank would have been crazy, and I applaud anyone that would be able to pull that off. Yeah. And then another comment, he's just responding to some commenter. Lastly, for those of you saying I fabricated the whole thing, my job is not to convince you. I'm simply relating what the heck happened to me and my army buddies. Believe what you will, but I know what happened to me. So these are pretty good. I like these. Almost all of these were super good. Some of them were really touching. Some of them were super sweet. Kind of paranormally cute. Is that a thing? I would love to hear your stories. Let's make that a thing. Send me an email, rfsspod, that's rfspod@gmail.com. And yeah, there you go. Did that convince you? Hopefully that convinced you. And I will share your stories, your true crime experiences, your paranormal experiences, anything weird, freaky, or just strange you want me to talk about that you would like to share. rfsspod@gmail.com, and we'll make that happen. Again, I thought those were super duper cool. I loved them. I liked them. And I will say, they were all really fucking scary stories. Have you had a really fucking scary experience? Have you seen a ghost? Have you been on a macabre adventure? Would you like to share it on air? Would you like for us to tell that story? Or you just have something horrid that you would like for us to talk about? Send us an email at rfsspod. That's rfsspod at gmail.com. Make sure that you subscribe. New episodes come out every single Friday. We look forward to continuing this creepy, crawly, morbid, macabre, and grotesque adventure with you, the listener. We love you, and we will see you soon. Thank you for joining us today on our trip into the dark. We hope that you join us again next week for all things horror, all things macabre, all things grotesque, here on Really Fucking Scary